I'm going to share the PowerPoint and we're go through the PowerPoint real quickly and then kind of open the majority of the time up for Q&A. Share this here. And then we're jump in. Can everybody see my screen?
Not yet, Scott.
Okay. Can you let me know once if it's coming through? Min, do you see it coming through?
No, not seeing anything yet.
Okay. Try this. Okay.
Oh, yeah, we do see that now. Thank you.
Sorry, technical error on my part. Okay. So with that, let's get started here. So this, so welcome to the December 15th, 2021 neighborhood meeting for the Coulon Shor Plat, or project number land 2021-00827. My name is Scott Reynolds, and I'm a planner with the City of Redmond, and I'm part of a team of city staff reviewing the proposal for compliance with city codes. I'll be facilitating tonight's meeting and fielding questions from the meeting participants at the end of the presentation. During the closure of City Hall due to the COVID-19 pandemic, neighborhood meetings are being held virtually to ensure the health, safety of city staff, applicants, and residents. This Zoom meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the project page at redmond.gov after the meeting. If you would like to provide comments about the project but were unable to attend the meeting, please reach out to me at Scott Reynolds by telephone at 425-556-2409 or via email at sreynolds@redmond.gov. While the presentation is occurring, we ask participants to remain on mute to avoid audio interference. Once the presentation has concluded, we will open up the meeting for questions from the audience. On tonight's agenda, we will introduce the project team. I'll discuss the process of reviewing a short plat. Then the applicant will go over general site information and details on the project. Both the applicant and the city will cover general questions that we have heard so far. And we will conclude with most of the meeting being questions and answers. So let's get started with introductions. As I covered, I'm Scott Reynolds. I'm the planner with the City of Redmond. Min Lo, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm Min Lo. I'm the transportation reviewer for this project. I review the frontage improvement, the street width, something like that.
Thank you, Min. Hiba, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I am Hiba Awad, utility engineer. I'm sitting here for John Glue, who's officially the reviewer for this project.
Perfect. And then I'm not sure if Janelle is on here right now, but Janelle Hitch is going to be the stormwater reviewer from the City of Redmond standpoint and can answer any questions tonight about that. With that, would the applicant like to introduce himself? Well, cool. If you're speaking, maybe need.
Sorry. Yep. Hi. So this is Mukul Kumar, and a brief overview of the project as well as an introduction by myself.
Mukul, if you can stick with just the introductions for now.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. Yep. So this is Mukul Kumar, and I'm representing Medina Customers.
Thank you. So let's talk about the process. So right now, the application that's before the City of Redmond for review is a short plat. The short plat process in the City of Redmond has a bunch of steps that comprises the short plat. Then it is followed by the coordinated civil review, then physical construction on the site, and then the final platting process, which legally divides the land. To go into more detail on what the short plat process is for the entitlements, is the applicant submits a formal plan to the city, and that's what has been done a couple months ago. Following the application submittal, the notice of application process commences. What the notice of application process means is that there's a sign posted on the property. Property owners within 500 feet are notified via mail. and then that it's opened up to public comments. I believe majority of the neighbors around the project has reached out to me already and provided public comments. All those public comments are part of the public record and are helped in the process of reviewing for code compliance. In the notice of application process, and in this process, there is a neighborhood meeting that's required, which is being held tonight. With that, we want to, the city wants to hear what the community has as concerns and to help facilitate communication with the applicant as well as city staff on achieving the best project to go forth. After this neighborhood meeting, the city staff and the applicant will be working together on achieving code compliance as this proceeds forward and working on achieving the community's concerns within the plan itself. Typically, the process for reviewing the plans takes about a year to two to fully get through the process. And then at the end, there's a technical committee recommendation, which comprises of all the reviews into one final notice of decision. The official notice of decision, if approved by the technical committee, is then provided to all parties of record. So if you're currently a party of record on the project, then essentially you would receive the notification of decision. Once that decision is done, then it proceeds forward, as already covered, to the coordinated civil review, which is a engineering review to make sure the pipes are going to meet the requirements, and then into the physical construction itself. And that's when you see the physical change, and then the final plating, which would legally create the lands and the lots for development. So to give a kind of a high level general overview, is the project location is located in the Willows Rose Hills sub area from a comprehensive plan designation from the city of Redmond. And the zoning district for the site is R5. What the R5 means is that there is 5 units allowed per acre for the development. And there's currently a single family home on the property, as I think most of the community is aware. With that, I'll turn it over to Mukul to kind of cover additional information and kind of more project questions for that. So Mukul.
Sure, thank you, Scott. So as Scott mentioned, this is a 1.13 acre site that we have here, zoned R5. And what we have done is worked with the city and several engineers that we had in our consulting team to come up with a comprehensive plan to put additional homes for this development. And the idea was to preserve the current setting that we already have, and keep it very residential and nature friendly, but also at the same time provide easy access to the folks that are going to be living in this community, but also that are already living in this community, and see how we could improve some of the infrastructure that we already have as we go through this development process. So that includes access improvements off of 132. It also includes a very comprehensive plan to preserve the NGPA and see how we can grow it. We have received a lot of questions. Maybe we can go to the next slide, Scott.
Sure.
So sorry. So this is the slide you will cover, or you want me to cover this one?
Yeah, if you want to cover that, Mukul.
Okay, sure. So as part of our overall process, we have provided a complete tree retention plan, but also a plan to actually put in a lot more trees. And we're saying, when we talk about a lot more trees, we're talking about in excess of 150 more trees, and about shrubs, which would be in excess of about 200, 250. Actually, no, sorry, in excess of about 300. So overall, we're talking about making this area a lot more greener and a lot more nature friendly than it is at this point in time. And some of that is shown in the subsequent slide. So this shows how we will go in and we'll actually plant, and that's the list of trees that is being proposed is on the left side. I just did a rough math and I came up over 150, and this does not even include the trees that are going to go along the peripheral strip around the lot. to address some of the privacy concerns that the neighbors have. But overall, it makes it for a lot more greener area. And then when you look at the shrubs, you're looking at about looking at about 300 shrubs that we would have in this area. And the idea was to preserve this NGPA area and make sure that we are providing a safe area for water runoff.
And just to clarify, this is the eastern part of the site. Is that correct, McCool?
Mm-hmm. That's the eastern side.
Thank you.
So I'm just showing one section of that overall portion of the development. And then we can go to the next one where we talk about some of the issues that we've heard so far and how the development is going to address those issues that have come up, which are very, very valid issues and the issues that we encountered when we initially had the discussions with the city about development of this parcel. There were access issues in terms of, the concerns around road width, grade, safe walk routes to school. So we followed the Redmond zoning code's minimum standards for access width, for safe walk routes, and minimum grade for access. And for that, to elaborate more on it, what we're doing is we're putting in sidewalks. We're actually widening the road as well, and we're setting it up so that currently it's an area where you cannot have, or there are challenges around access from fire trucks and garbage pickup, and see how we can have the grades set so that the homes down there benefit from being able to have the utility vehicles able to access the site, making it much more safer and easier access for young kids to have a sidewalk that they can walk to school to, for seniors because they'll have utility pickup there, fire issues if you run into any kind of an emergency situation, then the EMTs and the fire trucks can reach the houses and be able to assist. So that was something which we worked on. In addition, there was also a discussion around the stormwater in terms of how do we make sure that stormwater management is done correctly. So we have proposed, our rough estimate is about close to $500,000 worth of stormwater management is required for this development. That includes putting in an extensive framework of, or extensive system of water detention. And that's something which is under review with the city. The next thing was about the sewer and the utility connection. That is something which actually would be very helpful overall for the development of this area. Currently, there is no sewer connection. Most of the houses are on septic. Eventually, they would want to move over to sewer. This is something which actually was one of the key things which took us a lot of time, as some of the neighbors know about. But what we were able to ensure was that we were able to come up with a plan that would satisfy, according to us, we feel we've satisfied the requirements for able to extend the sewer line, which was part of the City of Redmond sewer master plan as well, and allows residents, in case this development does go through, eventually to be able to, depending on their situations, use those utilities. The next one is the wetland and the stream protection. There were a lot of questions around that. As we just showed, we have put together a very robust plan of about 500 trees and plants that we're going to be putting in to make sure that that area is protected. There's enough privacy in there. And more than just the trees, like there's a whole plan about how like the lights should be away from there, from the NGPA area and a bunch of other things. There were some questions around privacy, especially for the houses that are along 93rd Street. And what we are going to be doing is we're putting enough trees in there so that people are not I think one of the common was looking at somebody else's houses. We'll make sure that there are trees in there as part of the landscaping plan that address those kind of situations. So
Perfect.
I'll have them back to Scott. Thank you.
Thank you. So we wanted to kind of cover some of the information, the city's responses on kind of the questions at hand. I know I've been going back and forth for some of the community members. We're happy to go through any questions tonight. That kind of ends the presentation as part of this. In order to kind of keep things kind of organized and make sure we can get to all the questions, if you can start by raising your hands through the Zoom screen, there should be a hand icon. This will help me keep track of who has questions. I'll make sure to jump and get to everybody. Also, please help me track by stating your name clearly before asking questions. All questions will be a matter of public record and be incorporated into the official decision document. If you wish to be a party of record and have not and receive notification you're not a party of record already, please state your name and mailing address, and I can add you to the record. With that, I'll jump back over here. Okay, so I can see the screen and see everybody. Dennis, I see you have your hand up, but let me jump to do this. Perfect. So Dennis, I think you're up first. If you want to introduce yourself and then ask your question, and then either the city or McCool will help answer it.
Thank you, Scott. I'm Dennis Trapito. This is my wife, Natasha. We are at 9334 132nd Avenue, just north of the proposed development. The first thing that we want to mention is that we want this project to succeed. We welcome this development and we look forward to welcoming new neighbors. And we believe that constructing more residential housing is just the right thing to do. It's just a waste to have an acre of land in Redmond stay empty. At the same time, we have concerns, and we believe that a couple of those concerns are major because they are about safety. And we know we share those concerns with our neighbors. The major concern is the traffic concern. The driveway is very steep with very poor visibility, especially when we are turning left into that driveway. Now, there has been some confusion with the city of Kirkland about whether the left turns are or are not legal along our stretch of the 132nd. And the final confirmation that we got last week is that the left turns are allowed into our driveway. Min was part of that discussion, so Min can provide all the records. That brings back all those concerns that are raised in writing about the left turns. Is it okay, Scott, if I show the street view and some pictures to illustrate my concerns?
Let's try to just keep to the PowerPoint for simplicity. What I want to do is have Min and McCool kind of respond. If you want to respond off the response, we can do that too.
Okay. Before I let them respond, I want to clarify what I'm talking about. The real danger here is that when you are making a left turn into the driveway, which is very steep, you do not see cars coming from below. So if the car is not perfectly on the right side of the driveway, if the car is just a little bit off more toward the median, when you're making a left turn into the driveway, you do not see that car until a few seconds before it emerges from down below. And that has led into a couple of very dangerous situations when there was just one house, except our house on that driveway. I was making a left turn and I ended up bumper to bumper with the car coming from below with nowhere to go, and the traffic on 132nd Avenue going at full speed at me. So I was able to escape into the driveway of our neighbors, 9330, in that situation. Otherwise, I would have been hit by the car because I had nowhere to escape. I couldn't escape into the driveway. I was bumper to bumper with the car of our neighbor. So it was a very scary and potentially lethal situation. The other problem, so that's one problem with left turns. The second type of problems with left turns is when we are coming out of that driveway and waiting to turn into the street. Our intersection now is pretty much a four-way intersection for all intents and purposes. There is a development right across the street, and the cars are also coming from there and also making left and right turns. And now, but the roads are not perfectly aligned. So when you are looking straight ahead, you see the fence of the development across the street. And your attention is focused on cars on the street, obviously, because these are the cars you want to avoid, and they're going at full speed. And you tend to forget that from behind that fence, a car can emerge and also make a left turn. Happened to me once. We almost collided on the street because the cars very quickly emerge from behind the fence. You cannot see the cars until they are right at the street. They're covered by the fence. So our take on that is that this driveway is dangerous. This issue is important. It's about our safety. It's about our kids' safety. We just, even if it's widened, and widening is definitely going to help here. But even if it's widened, I just cannot see how it can take care of that problem of cars emerging from across the street from behind the fence.
Thank you.
So our take is I'm about to finish here. Our take is that it's dangerous enough with 2 homes using it. 5 more homes, that's extra 9 cars. Our neighbor was just living alone there, so it was just one driver, so extra 9 drivers. The likelihood of those situations, the frequency of those dangerous situations is going to increase accordingly. And we are worried about that. We believe that the solution is to build fewer houses on this property.
Okay. So just to make sure, because I want to have Min from the city respond back to that to provide some Q&A, and then I also want to provide McCool also a chance to respond. But I just wanted to capture the questions that you had or the concerns is really about left turns coming southbound on 132nd Avenue into the site, crossing the northbound lanes of traffic, as well as leaving the driveway, making a left turn out of it, merging onto 132nd Avenue. Did I kind of capture kind of the concerns?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Min, do you want to, Min or McCool, do you guys want to start to talk about transportation requirements or what's going to be done on the project to address those?
Yeah, I can start and Michael could supplement later. So regarding the left turn, I know we have email chain back and forth. I did talk to City of Coulon staff also. It is confirmed passing is not allowed, but if you are causing the solid yellow lines into the driveway, which is allowed, but on the condition it's a safe, and then there's a gap, you can see there's no northbound traffic. You will have to yield to the northbound traffic. So when you see there's a gap enough for you to turn in, you may do so. So it's okay to turn in, but need to yield to the oncoming traffic, the northbound traffic, when it's safe and as a gap to turn in. You may also do that. That is adjusting the southbound left turn. And then in terms of the access road, you said previously, there's a very steep grade. I understand the topography is steep. And I believe the development is going to propose fatten a bit of the grade, so would not be that steep as the existing condition. That is one thing. And then the other things that the road will be widening for two-way traffic, I believe so. So right now, the existing access is very narrow. I think that probably just for one-way traffic only, or not sufficient for two-way traffic, as I understand. But in the future, when this development occurred, the road had to be widened to be wide enough for fire access, garbage truck access, and other service truck access, as well as enough width for two-way traffic. So you won't have to encounter the existing traffic on the right-hand side. So you will have your own lane, just sufficient enough for two vehicles passing through each other. So that would improve the situation you describe, and then you come into the driveway, but there's not enough room to pass by the oncoming traffic. That is one thing. And then the other thing you were talking about, the exiting left turn from the side, have an offset with the other driveway on the opposite of 132nd. So I did talk to the City of Coulon, and then you mentioned the house, five house would have 9 cars. I understand they will have maybe 10 cars, but they're not all coming all at once. So per the national chip generation standard, the worst case in the PM peak hour, like between the hour 4 to 6 p.m. So the maximum traffic from the site would be 5 vehicles, not 9 vehicles all at once coming out from the side. So they're not adding 9 cars all at once. I understand it could potentially have 10 cars, 9 cars, but they're not coming out all at once, okay? And then regarding the left turn out from the site, I know there's not perfectly aligned out with the driveway to the west, but the flag access point, that is the only access point for this parcel. So we have to allow the access here. We cannot block this access because this is the only access to 132nd. We don't have any other access. So when the vehicle coming from the site, they will have to stop there and then look around, look to the north, look to the south, and then also look to the west. So when you made a turn, you have to make sure that is safe before you made the turn. So they have to look for each other, and then that would serve as a two-way stop. The north and south would not stop, and then two-way stop. It would like who come first, and then who would leave first. So it's like will operate like other two-way stop. First come, first leave. Then just make sure you look to the north, look to the south, and then look to the opposite direction. Make sure there's a gap enough to make a turn. I think because this is the only access point, I don't know where you can allow any other access. We will have to allow access from the legal standpoint over there.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think I'm going to stop here. Then
cool.
Makul to try in, and if you have additional question, we can talk about it later. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much. Thanks, Dennis. I think I mean, you covered it really well. I mean, the only thing which I will add here is I think from your concerns are what exactly we took into account when we were doing this development, because when you look at it right now, it is challenging, and we were looking at it and we spent a lot of time and effort to figure out what is the best way to make it feasible and make it safe. And that was what went into the design that we did it. And I think it, like Min said, it addresses your concerns in terms of the fact that how do you do vehicle passing? We make the road wider. That addresses the issue around that. There are issues around how do we make sure, you know, the concerns around steepness. So we're making it flatter rather than having it steep. So that addresses from their standpoint. There were a lot of questions that came in around the left turn on 132nd. Unfortunately, I'm not part of your communication with the city of Kirkland, so I'm not in a position to comment on what happened last week. If you can include me in those, I can probably have more context to respond. The last communication I had on 132nd was several weeks ago, where there were two options. One was you do not have a left turn because you have a solid yellow line. The second was to put a C curb so that we can, rather than having an implicit, you have an explicit separation. And putting in a C curb, what it does is it ensures that people who are not aware of the fact that they cannot cross the yellow line do not accidentally cross the yellow line and go onto the other side. And if that is the direction we want to go, is we put a physical separation on 132nd. That's something which we're happy to explore. But from my understanding, I thought that matter was settled several weeks ago. So I'm not aware of the discussion that has transpired in the last week or so. So I'm happy to, as I always have offered, I'm happy to sit down with you, have a phone call discussion with you, figure out how we do it. At the end of the day, like you said, we're in this community together. We are here to see how we can make it better for the community and see how we can work on this. Because at the end of the day, we strongly believe that this development is very, very beneficial for the entire community over there.
Yeah, I do want to add into the left-hand conversation on that. So I did chat with the Washington driver guideline, their guidance over there, and then also chat with the city of Coulon. They don't feel like we will need to put a secret over there. So,
okay.
And then the solid yellow line is allowed to make turn to the driveway or alley or access, but you're not supposed to like overpass the vehicle. So it's not for passing, but turn is okay. In the condition is safe. So you would need to watch the gap and then yield to the oncoming traffic in order to do so.
The last thing I'll add before we jump to Catherine, because they've been waiting patiently here, is that the city of Redmond is still reviewing this for compliance. So there are standards for the width, the certain grade requirements for the approaches, also clear sight triangles. So when you pull up into an intersection, you know, do you have those clearances? So that's all under technical review right now. And we're still very early in the process. So this is great feedback that we're hearing from the community, as this is one of the key community concerns. Catherine, do you want to go for your questions here?
Well, I'm Catherine Hammer, and I live near the top of 93rd Street. behind, there would be a house between our house and the new houses, but I wanted to ask about the sewer access, and this may have been answered already, but my understanding was that the sewer capacity on 93rd Street is full and has been full for a long time, and that that it could not add 5 properties to it. So I was just wondering how that is being addressed.
That's a great question. I have Hiba Awad here. She's filling in for Zhang Lu, who's doing the formal review. I'm gonna have her kind of answer the questions, especially with the sewer master plan. And then McCool can add in after that if he has any questions.
Hi, this is Hiba Awad. I'm a utility engineer with the city. Based on the general sewer comprehensive plan, this area can be served by 93rd Street. If you have information, I'm not sure what kind of information you have about the capacity of the sewer main along 93rd Street. This is something I'm sure it was really calculated to be able to really serve those properties by the sewer main along 93rd. So we really have our own calculation, and based on the zoning of each area, we count how many houses this sewer is going to serve in the future, in addition to the existing houses. So I'm not really, I don't have any information about capacity issue here. You can really email me in the future or email Jung, who's the official reviewer, to check into something like this. If you have any specifics, I need more information from you. If you have any kind of problems of flooding or anything, incidents, I would like to know about it.
Well, that's why I'm asking, because my understanding is that when my home and the home to the west of mine and the newer home that was built behind, those properties, the sewer access was arranged by Dale Potter, who lives facing 93rd Street. And my understanding was he got the last sewer access. And so if the city has established that it's safe, then, you know, that's fine. But the problems, the flooding would probably not be at the top of the hill. It would probably be down at the bottom of the hill.
Exactly. So here you have, we don't have any issues in this area, especially with the slope and the size of the sewer main. If there are any capacity problems to the east, the maintenance usually record this, and we have a database basically to count for any issues arise on the east. So, but again, based on the plan was not really drawn from nothing. It's based on calculations and zoning, expected zoning of this area. And so far, we don't have any concerns about the capacity.
Thank you, Hiba.
Sure.
Thank you.
McCool, do you want to explain kind of the proposal where the sewer is actually running through the project and how it's going to connect to 93rd, just real quickly?
Sure. So basically, if you see the line, I don't know if I can, you can see my arrows, but basically, yep. So the sewer line runs along the driveway further down, and then it crosses over and then goes to 93rd Street.
So essentially it's crossing at the eastern part of the project through kind of near the wetlands area is where it's connecting to.
Mhm.
That's part of it. Catherine, do you have any other questions before we jump over to Pierco or Juliana?
Thank you.
I want to add also that the city currently is reviewing the sewer design.
Yeah.
This is what's really what you're seeing is proposed by the applicant, and the city is in the middle of the review of the layout of the sewer main, location of sewer manholes, and any necessary easements or access issues. So, and it has to meet the code and requirements for the design.
Thank you, Hiba.
Sure.
I couldn't tell who was first. I don't know if Pierco was first or if Juliana was first. But Pierco or Juliana, if you want to go next.
Sure, I'm happy to go. Hi, my name is Pierco Terrell. My husband, Mark Terrell, is here with me. We live on 93rd. We're at 13314 Northeast 93rd Street on the diagram currently up. We are, yes, McCool's pointing to our property.
Oh, sorry, that's
McCool,
me. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Scott. That's where we are. My first question is, will this document be available? Because I haven't seen one that shows how the property lines, like the diagram that you're showing right now. So it shows how the lots line up with our lots. Is this now available? I hadn't seen it before.
Yes, so the PowerPoint, this PowerPoint will be
Yes.
available on the city's website,
Great.
as well as this recording will be available. Yes,
Great.
so all that'll be available for you guys.
I thought that's what you said, but I just wanted to confirm. So McCool, I wish I could see your face because it'd be nice to actually know who you are. As you say that you're interested in being a part of our community. I also want to state you believe this is beneficial for the community and for the neighborhood, but I do have to say in our instance, for those of us that border this on 93rd, this is a dramatic change for us, and it actually is not beneficial for us. So while we have always known that houses would go in here, and we do understand the need for density in a community and that kind of stuff, I do want to just acknowledge the fact that this is a pretty dramatic change for those of us that live along here. And so you can say that it's better for the community, but for those of us in this situation, it's not better. So that's my first kind of comment and point. My second thing is I'm very concerned about privacy. Right now, we have a high degree of privacy. And so you've mentioned putting in trees, and with the angle of where our houses are, we sit above this property. So when we are in our homes or when we are out on our decks or in our yards, we will be looking down into these houses. And so from that standpoint, for us, it's maybe not that bad. For the people who live in that house, it could be bad. They're going to be on display. And so I know that some trees are going to mitigate that, but I'm curious if you are taking into account any efforts in the design and placement of the homes to help mitigate that as well. So, so point number one is that this is not beneficial for our family. Question number one is, what is being done to help mitigate the imposition of privacy? And then my second question, I also want to mention that I'm very concerned about the traffic implications that Dennis has brought up. I'm a cyclist, and I've almost been hit a couple of times by people coming out of that driveway. It's not just limited to the people who live on that driveway, it's the people who live on the community. If there's an accident, it impacts everything and it stops up traffic. So these concerns have an impact on all of us around here. And so I just wanted to bring up those points and see specifically if you could speak to issues related to privacy.
I'm going to turn this over to McCool, and then I can fill in kind of some code requirements about what the code has for privacy.
Sorry, and I have one other thing to add to that too. I also don't see a lot of parking. And so if somebody has company or something, where are they going to be? Because there isn't parking on the street. And I don't know if that in turn means that they're going to be parking in front of my house.
Perfect. McCool, do you want to start off on this?
Yes. Yeah, I don't think there's, yeah, I would hope not that they would have to go all the way around to park next to your house, because it's probably a mile away from where they live. And there's no direct access unless they kind of jump over the fence. Sorry, I was, but I get your point about privacy, and I get your point about vehicle access. And what we have done is we have made sure, again, we've looked into all of those things. So I don't have the city regulations in front of me, but there is, just as you have along 93rd Street, you have houses which have a garage, 2-car or 3-car garage for parking, and similarly parking in the driveway. We are going to be making sure that that's something which is followed as it is the norm in City of Redmond. So we're going to be following all of the regulations that are required for parking spaces that are required for the houses. We are following the regulations in terms of making sure that there's enough privacy. The goal that we have here, putting in a development, it adversely impacts us if we're not providing them privacy to the folks who are going to be living in those houses. It impacts us more than anybody else if you have a house there that we have somebody coming to live in, or potentially thinking of living in that new construction house and realizing that he does not have, or she does not have, privacy. So those were things that were top of our mind. And we have done, as I said earlier, in our design, accommodated that by making sure those considerations are taken care of. Those can be done in multiple ways. This can be done in terms of the way the houses are designed. That can be done in terms of what else we have besides the house design, which is making sure that we have adequate tree cover over there to address any of those concerns that would come in, putting in fences as and when needed. So, I mean, there are a lot of different things that are done now to make sure that that is, again, going in and that making sure that this development is actually beneficial to the community. And it is beneficial for us to put that development in there. Otherwise, it defeats the whole purpose.
I will add from a code requirement for both the parking and screening, just for everybody's knowledge, is that the code does require where existing homes are and where new homes are proposed, is that there's a 5-foot planting buffer, where either it has to be majority evergreen trees planted at a certain height, or a mixture of evergreen deciduous with a fence. And so it's up to developers to kind of choose what route to go. But this is something that's still under review at this time for the application. As for parking, there are required off-street parking for individual single-family homes. Typically what happens is usually, I think, 2 stalls per house. Typically with a 2-car garage and a driveway, it meets the requirements as part of it. There's no requirements in the city code for off-street parking for additional vehicles. So if you have guests over a Thanksgiving meal, essentially any public right-of-way that's used can be parked upon. So do you have any follow-up questions, Pirko, before we jump over to Juliana?
I guess, Nicole, I hear you that you think it's more detrimental to you to not have privacy. I wish you understood that it's an impact for us as well.
I definitely do. And I want you to
feel that way in how you.
It does impact us as well. That's why I mentioned, but I'm not in any way mitigating your concerns. I'm just telling you, we are equally impacted by it and we are equally concerned about it. And that's why we're making sure that it's done the right way. That was the whole reason for me pointing that out, but I totally get your point and your concern about it.
Okay, a little respect goes a long way, but yes, thank you.
Juliana, and then I have Stephen and Tim after that. Juliana, we'll go. Oh, there may be some audio issues.
I think she's in mute.
Oh. Still having audio. Doesn't look like it's working. You may have to go into Zoom and change your microphone settings and maybe switch to a microphone that's not working right now. If it's okay, well, we're going to, as you're working on that, I'm going to jump to Stephen on his question, and then we're going to jump back to you.
Okay.
Stephen?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So this is Stephen. I live at 13218 Northeast 93rd Street. So right below, on south of the existing properties in the lot. So so there is an existing easement, which the sewer easement for the existing house to share the sewer line in the driveway on my property. So my question is, after the new development and all the sewer lines goes to the east side of the property, then what is the plan for the existing easement? And I'm assuming there will be changes and like they will be closing up the existing easement connecting to my sewer line. And if that is the case, will there be proper inspection by the city on how the work is done, and who will be responsible for the problems happens if there's any issues after the changes to the sewer line? So yeah, this is my first question. And the second question is regarding to the privacy. So I would like to get more detail on what is the plan on improving the privacy between the new houses and the existing houses along the 93rd Street. So for my lot specifically, so there will be a gap on the west side of the north boundary, and it will be directly visible to the lot number 1 in the new development. So what is the plan to add to the privacy of that part of the boundary of the lot? Yeah.
Perfect.
That's it.
So I have question number 1, which is the existing sewer connection for the house, what's going to take place with that in the easement. And then the second one is what is the privacy in regards to your property to lot 1? Is that correct?
Yes, that sounds good. Thanks.
Perfect. I'm gonna have Makul answer it and then have Heba follow up on the city code requirements.
Hi, Stephen. Frankly, those are good questions. We have not, I mean, I think it's a little bit early on in the whole process of this development. So we haven't really put in that much thought into how it would work out in terms of the existing easement that we have. Very likely we will not be using it, and in that case we will follow what the city code is, and I'm not we'll have to defer to Heba, but I'm not sure what that process is like, but whatever the city process would be is what that we would follow. So maybe she can chime in on that one. The second one was around the privacy. So we are, I think it goes back to the question that Perko had as well, Pierco had as well. We are looking at making sure that there are evergreen trees along that complete lot, all the way backing up to the backing up the lot line for the houses that are on 93rd Street, so that there is privacy, and then also making sure the houses are designed in such a way to maximize on that as well.
Heba, do you want to talk about abandonment procedures or processes in the city?
Yes. Again, I want to really repeat this. This design is not final. What you see on the plan is under review of the city, and we have a bunch of comments to the applicant, and we'll communicate with the applicant in the future with our comments and how to address our comments about the current design of sewer. For this sewer main, I'm assuming it's a sewer main because we have an easement here. So there must be a manhole within the lot, and also it's extended all the way to 93rd. If this easement is not needed in the future, we usually work with the applicant to really relinquish this easement if it's not needed by the city. So again, we really look at the design right now and make sure with, the applicant will address all of our comments, address access for maintenance of, the whole sewer main, new sewer main, and make sure it's working for the ultimately serving the neighborhood in the comprehensive plan. So this is really the applicant until now did not really look deep at this location and what's really going to be done with this easement. But ultimately, when they really for sure don't need it, they work on relinquishing it.
Thank you, Hiba.
Mhm.
Stephen, I'll just add to that is that this is a great question. This is something that the city is going to look into and make sure it's captured in the comments as it continues on to review to move forward. Stephen, do you have any follow-up questions before I jump back
So
to
I just want
Juliana?
to clarify thanks. Thanks for the answers. I just want to clarify that what I'm concerning about is the existing easement which connecting the single house of the existing lot on the existing lot to my sewer line. And I want to make sure that any changes done by the developer is done properly and inspected by the city, so that if anything any problem happens in the future, then just want to prevent any problems which could happen in the future because of the changes.
Yeah, I want to add, usually when we really basically abandon certain sewers, we cut and cap the sewer mains per our standards. We have our own procedures. The applicant needs to address this. Usually they start addressing this issue during the SPE and then later on during CCR as we really approach construction. So all of those details are addressed in our standards and in our details, and they will be on the plan.
So Stephen, yes, we will be checking in on that. Okay.
Okay, thank you guys.
With that, Juliana, were you able to get the audio worked out? Oh, she may. Oh, she may still be struggling here on the audio. With that, we'll jump over to Tim. Oh, Juliana.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, now you can hear me. Is it through this or my phone? All right, wait. Either way. Can you hear me this way?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so it looks like the audio is coming. Okay, I think we figured out a workaround. My devices apparently aren't very compatible with Zoom. So first of all, an enthusiastic +1 to Dennis's concerns about the traffic. And obviously with MIN, we were able to confirm with the city of that it is a legal maneuver to make a left-hand turn. However, I'm still unclear how a completely legal move is still going to be safe. Right now, I've got 3 little children. I've had issues with Adele tearing down this road, or even not tearing down, but just going down pretty quickly within the speed limit, but not necessarily seeing my children or my children seeing her. So at some point I will revisit this recording to see what I missed. But I'm very interested to see how this development will actually affect the safety. Also, the folks who are on this call, Nicole, Scott, Min, etc. With all due respect, it's harder to explain when you don't live here. I think, obviously you're all trying to do your jobs, right? the fallout. And so I appreciate the accountability that I've seen, particularly with like answers from Scott and getting answers for us, or even the answers I don't know. We'll get back to you on that. That goes a long way. And an enthusiastic plus one to Perico's comments and concerns. My letter is quite long, and I don't want to tie up what remaining 22 minutes we have with everything. Because I know that other people who have their hands raised. I am curious to know about access to the private road, and what is the plan for us and the driveway or the access that we had previously to the road that is now blocked by a concrete barrier.
Perfect.
That's my first question.
So what I'm going to do is, I know you have a list of questions as part of this, as part of the type up for the questions that will be done after this Zoom call, is I'll make sure that your questions are incorporated for everyone else to see too, and then have
Thank
responses
you.
with
Thank
them.
you.
But when the first question is just, how is your driveway access going to interact with the new access to this development? I'm going to have, I guess, McCool jump on first, and then have Min follow up.
I'm not sure how, or if there would be any difference for you in terms of the access, but I don't see any change. But I would let, maybe, I don't know, Scott, maybe Min can help us understand if there is something that is impacting.
Min, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I also want to understand what the real question was. So are you asking, are you allowed to access the private street? I know you have access directly on 132nd right now, right? So from the city standpoint, we would want to have joint access as best as we can. But if you're not doing any redevelopment, so your garage access would remain as it is right now. But for something, if you are thinking to redevelop, right, tear down the house and rebuild, we would probably looking at to have the access off the private street, not directly to 132nd, because 132nd is the arterials. So the city standard would prefer the access point from the lower street classification, which is the private street. So we are still reviewing this project, and then we have comment to see if the private street would allow share access for all the parcels around, like your parcel and then the parcel to the north, the two parcels to the north. So in the future, in any case, if some development happen, we would want the access to be shared to eliminate access point to the arterials. So the house you have right now, and then the one to the north, adjacent to 132nd, looks like they are all accessed directly to 132nd. So it would be nice or great to have those driveway access off the private street, not directly to 132nd, to eliminate the access point. That's the city's code here.
Thank you, Min.
I think maybe my question might not be very clear. That private road is currently owned by Petco and Mukul. Dennis has an easement on this road. When we moved into the home, Adele Hartman, the previous owner of Mukul's property, had installed concrete barriers blocking us from access to the road because she thought it strengthened her case for getting her property, her plans for development approved. So what I'm trying to understand is twofold. One is, will we have access? Like, is that, would we need an easement, and would an easement be on the table for us so that we could periodically access this back road? And the reason why I ask is, you know, particularly if I'm pulling out into the street and I've got three kids in the back seat of my car, and I have to back out onto a busy street. It's incredibly nerve-wracking, particularly if we have a third person over, like my mother or someone's visiting, and we have to back out. So being able to periodically access parking in our backyard, that parking space that's been there for decades, would be incredibly helpful. And then the other question is, if the plans for installing a sidewalk on this private road and a street light, as I understand, is in the works, would this sidewalk that would be on our side of the road prohibit us from accessing it? Would it have a, you know, a dip, or would it just be a straight up sidewalk up and down? And that option is off the tables for us.
Yeah, so if you're not the developer or not doing any house, so I don't think we will have to force you to access from the private road. But I think the city would consider to have this private street provide easement for all the house around. So in the future, if any parcel come for the development, we would want to eliminate the direct access to 132nd. So, but the proposal is still under review. So that's what we are thinking right now. We didn't know the final outcome would be, but that's the way we were thinking.
So Julian, yeah, that's a great comment. And this is something that, again, we're early in the process, and these are great comments that have been brought up tonight that really help the city kind of look at this, and also help the developer kind of really understand and better address the concerns of the community. So that's something definitely that we're looking into when it comes to the access to your driveway into this new road coming in. Do you have McCool? I'm not sure if you want to add to that.
No, I think you guys have covered it well.
Okay. Juliana, do you have any other questions before we jump over to Tim?
Yeah, in terms of the plans for the construction, what sort of timeline are we looking at, and how many years? And are these homes going to be constructed simultaneously or one at a time?
I'm going to have McCool start with that on kind of his proposed timing, and then I'm happy to fill in.
I think from our standpoint, we would want to make sure that there's minimum interference and in the construction time. So we would definitely want to make sure that any disturbance that the community would feel with the construction is minimized, and that would be our goal. It's a little bit early in the process to figure out the timing and be able to provide that. I think I don't want to be held accountable for some of that, because frankly, I don't know. I would probably let Scott go in more detail about that, but our goal would be to move as fast as we can.
So typically for short plats like these across the city of Redmond, usually it takes about year to 2 years to get to actual construction. So there's the site plan entitlement the entitlement process, which concludes with the notice of decision, and then you have the civil construction drawings after that, and then that's when the physical construction begins after that. So we're still really early in the process, but I would say average is about 1 to 2 years.
Understood. Thank you. And before I want to pass the mic to the other people who have questions here, and granted, I've got like 30. But is there going to be another opportunity to raise these questions live, or is this sort of like a one and done thing?
At this time, this is the only neighborhood meeting proposed. So
Got it. Okay.
there's still going to be opportunity to reach out and connect with the applicant as well as the city after the meeting.
Okay. Thank
Hi,
you.
this is Joachim jumping in just to follow up on this. What are the next steps? Because I feel I'm a little disappointed in the answers and the clarity we're getting here. It feels like there's a lot of things left unsaid. And so how do we actually get to answers? And what's the next step for doing that? Is it then in writing with you, Scott, and with the applicant, or how do we actually get to something concrete?
So generally speaking, a lot of this at the neighborhood meeting is just kind of listening to the community and trying to then go in and try to address it. So as it progresses, the project progresses, essentially staff is happy to follow back up with the community. But essentially your notice decision at the end will have all the items. So all the public comments, all the items are going to be addressed, as well as kind of the follow-ups as part of it. But I can tell from this community is that there's a lot of community pride in this area. And so one of the things that the city can do is we can follow back up kind of as the project gets closer to proceeds forward and kind of works through kind of some of these items, is to circle back with the community via email or via kind of an update. Perfect. Okay, with that, I think Tim has been very patient here. And I see Dennis is right up, also has his hands up. I want to jump over to Tim to get his question asked, as we're kind of getting 10-ish minutes left in the meeting.
Great, thanks, Scott. My name is Tim Quigley. I live in 13320 Northeast 93rd Street. I live at the eastern end of the homes affected. And one of my big concerns is the protected wetlands that border our property. It looks as though the easement for the utilities or the sewers is actually going to be bumping into the protected wetlands. There is a good number of trees, and I appreciate McCool saying that they plan on adding shrubbery and trees to the new development. But what happens to those trees that are going to be taken out for the sewage, the sewers that are going to be constructed? And then also, has anybody and Heba can answer this, has anybody looked at how close you're going to be coming to the wetlands? Just because I think it's actually going to be going into them, and it's not going to be just on the shore of it.
May I jump in here, because my question was also about wetlands. So is it okay if I just add on?
Absolutely, Dennis.
Yeah, Dennis, please add on.
Yeah, so my concern was actually about wetlands and about the same area that Tim is talking about, and it's also about safety. Those wetlands are they are basically a mud hole with water, and in our emails with you, Scott, you mentioned that the code requires a fence between the wetlands and the new development, and you mentioned it's a split rail fence. I looked it up, and the split rail fence is not the kind of a fence that would prevent small kids and pets from wandering to that area and coming into danger in that mud hole. So my request here would be to put in a fence that would actually be blocking kids and pets from entering that area. It's a major safety concern that I had. Thank you.
Sure. I will touch upon the code requirements and have McCool follow up kind of what the plans are and how he's been planning on addressing it. So from the city of Redmond standpoint, there is a required critical area report that's required to be submitted. Essentially, the applicant's biologist has to go out and basically show where's the wetlands, where's the streams, where are the buffers, and where are they in coordination to the project. That's still under review. As Tim, you brought up, is the sewer main, how does that connect through? As you brought up, is the sewer main's also running near the buffers, if not in a critical area. And so that's also still in review. So when it comes to wetlands, there's a whole code section. It talks about if you do have to impact wetlands, what are the mitigation requirements? And so then there's a whole mitigation section that would go through. And we're still early in the process, so the plans are still getting reviewed for those compliance. So we don't have an answer for you on that when it comes to the trees and impacts to the wetlands, but that's something that the city is aware of and is working to achieve code compliance on. Dennis, to your question in regards to the fencing requirements, one of the keys when it comes to native growth protection area is that you have availability for wildlife to be able to move through the fences. And so that's where the split row fence is really a demarcation as well as a demarcation for basically humans. And a lot of times it's put on the edge of either the easement or the tract. In this situation, any of the buffers are going to be usually next to a tract where that's usually going to be owned typically by HOA or some other common ownership. So it should have that general protection. Then usually there's weeds and other stuff that grows on the other side. So that's typically what we see, and that's what the code requires. If you start changing that, it gets into code deviations. There may be some other ways to achieve the safety requirements, but it definitely is something that we can talk about, and from the city standpoint, we can look into.
Thank you.
But cool.
Yeah. So if the kind of, my concern is that right now we have had no kids at all on the property that now is being developed, and if we have more kids there, potentially tens of them. So if they can wander through that fence into that wet area, I'm really concerned about safety. And we are it's nominally part of our parcel. So I'm worried also about liability and whatever things like that. It may affect us if something happens to someone wandering into that wetland. So if the barrier cannot be installed along the border of the wetland, that may be somewhere on the development or somewhere between the houses and that border, there must be some sort of a barrier that would prevent kids and pets from wandering in there.
I'll turn it over to McCool if there's any development questions or development follow-up for the plans. McCool?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think I don't have the complete report with me right now, unfortunately, but there is a lot of work that is being proposed in addition to just planting trees. And I don't want everybody to feel, okay, we just plant the trees and we're done. There's a lot of work that the biologist has recommended that we would be doing to make sure that it is safe, to make sure that it is done correctly, to make sure that we are actually enhancing that area and making it a kind of an area where it would be a true extension of the wetlands. Keeping in mind, obviously, the fact that when you look at it right now, compared to where it would be, I feel you would see a very, very significant positive impact from this development happening over there. But I'm happy to answer any other specific questions you have.
Scott, when we spoke, I think I asked about a retention pond because that's part of, as you'd mentioned, to a mandate in Western Washington, and I don't see that on the plan, and I was wondering if McCool could speak to that.
There is a big detention vault.
Oh,
Actually,
it's
okay. Quite significant one that we have proposed.
So it's a vault then?
Okay. Yes. And that's where I was mentioning earlier, like I think it's a significant investment that we're doing to make sure it's done correctly.
And then going back to Pirko's point, and actually a couple of people's points about privacy, you talked about lining the homes on 93rd with trees as a buffer, and many of these homes are actually above the new development, not so much as ours. But if you're talking about an evergreen tree that's going to start at, I don't know, we'll say 6 feet, In many cases, there will be no privacy because they're not going to grow. They'll grow quickly, but initially there won't be any privacy. And I was wondering, you can say there's going to be a certain number of trees per lot to create a strong buffer. Because if you're talking about, a tree every 12 feet, eventually in 30 years, it'll grow in. But for the neighbors now, there's going to be no buffer. So as we move forward, I think all of us would like to know exactly what the plan is for that, is how many trees, the type of trees, the spacing between the trees, just so that when these homes, if they're built, that we understand that there is going to be privacy between them.
So just a code clarification, and then McCool can jump in here. So the requirement for the landscaping screening is that there is I believe, an 8-foot requirement if there is a fence or if there's not a fence. But it's either going to be 6 to 8 feet tall plantings that are required by code. McCool?
Yeah. So for the development, we have hired a landscape architect, and that's part of something which we worked with them to see how the trees should be planted, and that again goes back to the code that the city of Redmond has around the planting strips that are required along the edge of the lot. Yeah, it's not. There's definitely some planning and sort of method to the madness, as I would say, that has gone in terms of this. I don't recall like the exact separation between each tree, but as I mentioned, I mean, we're talking hundreds of trees getting planted for this development overall. So I mean, I don't have an exact separation, but there should be enough coverage to ensure privacy, as I mentioned, and also in terms of the houses that end up getting designed.
And Scott, going back, you had talked about the critical area report. When is that due to be completed? Because a lot of the questions that have been coming up seem to like they're going to be part of that report. And since this is our only opportunity to voice our concerns, is there a timeline that you have for the arborist report, stormwater, critical care, and I guess SEPA to put their stamp on this as well?
Yeah, so just to clarify, this is opportunity to provide comments kind of in a virtual verbal environment, but there is also the continuation that you can still reach out to the city and the applicants on follow-up questions as part of that. So that, just to clarify that one point. Second of all, when it comes to all the reports, those are all been submitted and are under review. They're part of the public records. So if the community would like to, we could, that can be provided out to the public. But generally speaking is once it gets to the notice of decision, from entitlement standpoint, all the reports, all the documents, all those are conditioned together. So essentially when we were talking about reviewing, you're doing the technical review, which takes about a year or two on average. Really, that's what we're reviewing, is reviewing the critical area report, reviewing arborist report, reviewing all those other reports to make sure that they're meeting, achieving minimum code compliance. And then ultimately, there's a few things here that came out of the neighborhood meeting that we want to make sure is also addressed as well, especially with traffic safety, and comes to the sewer connectivity and how that gets addressed, and some other items that have been brought up. So we'll make sure we capture that and then get them resolved.
I have one last question. I know we're running out of time. At the, I guess that would be the south end of our property, there's a utility box. And I'm not sure if that has been taken into consideration when putting in a sewer for the sewer easement. Would it have to be moved? Whose homes does it affect?
Yeah. For that standpoint, I'm gonna open up to McCool to know, answer the question first, and then I'm gonna have Heba kind of answer when it comes to utility coordinations.
I'm sorry, I don't recall that level of detail on this. I'll have to go back and check my notes. Our goal would be to not impact anything, considering, you know, there's enough space there for us to be able to put an 8-inch sewer line without impacting basically most of the area over there. So I don't foresee any changes to the utility box, but I don't want to. I'll have to go back and check the plans to be completely honest. But I don't foresee a big change. Maybe the reviewers have looked at it and maybe they have more detail on it.
Heba, can you
Yeah,
speak to
I
the,
don't have that information on the plan. So I don't have comments from John even to pass at this point. The applicant later in the design will provide detailed plans and existing utilities. And we require, the city requires the existing utility plan and as well the proposed, basically embedded into the existing utility plan. So everything should be shown on the plan, including utility box, and the design requirements need to be met. So basically, usually we ask for 5 feet separation between dry utilities. Dry utilities means cable, gas, electrical, to our sewer. Basically, we allow utilities to be within the easement. It's okay, but we require enough separation. Basically, it's 5 feet. So again, I need to see the plan in detail to be able to review it and make sure that there is no conflict. And if there's any conflict, the city requires modifying the design or require relocation of that utility at the expense of the applicant. So it depends on each situation and case. So I need to really see the plan first.
and Tim,
And so
yeah,
with
go
that
ahead.
information, I can tell you, Tim, so the easement is 20 feet, and if the separation is only 5 feet, that leaves enough space for us to not move the utility box. But again, I'll have to also go back. That's a very, very specific question you're asking.
And Tim, the city of Redmond hears you, and we're make sure that gets addressed as part of the review. Okay, so I know I think the flyer said 6 to 7:30 is the meeting's going to. Typically, at least for my mind, I start fading here probably like 7:45, 8 o'clock. I'm happy to continue if there's kind of a last few questions as part of it, but kind of look at end of the meeting at 8 o'clock. If anybody has to jump off, more than welcome to us at this time.
One very quick question related to the utility box, the same topic while we're at it. As I'm looking at this picture, which we have on the slide, and the road being widened toward the north. So we have all of our utility lines and our water meter. They're going to be basically paved over by this road. We are wondering if the developer has any plans for making sure that the utilities are not damaged, and particularly that water meter. I'm wondering, can it happen that it will be just under the pavement or in the pavement, or how will that be? Right now, it's just sitting there in the corner of our neighbor's property. But if their pavement is there, I guess the question is, what will happen to that meter?
I'm going to turn this over to McCool because this is kind of north of the city limits right now in a private easement.
Right. So we'll have to look at where the meter, where, again, on top of my head, frankly, I was prepared more for general questions. This is a very specific, but anything that is to do with utilities will have to be approved. Any work that is being done for utilities will have to be approved by City of Redmond or City of Kirkland. And that will mean making sure that the review process takes into account that there is safety of the community, the safety of the people around, as well as the underlying infrastructure does not get damaged. And we will make sure that that happens because we're committed to it. That's why we're following the due process over here, making sure we're going through the right steps and following the protocol. And that's what we plan on doing in that case as well. It is very common to have utilities under the roads. I mean, when we look around all our roads, the utilities are basically running under the roads. So this would probably not be something new. And again, I would like to reemphasize, we're going to do everything by the book.
I just want to point out that I understand that it's common for utilities to be paved over, but now this project is going to make repair access to those utilities more difficult. So again, it's not improving it's not an improvement for us. It's actually, if anything happens to those lines, and we have heard that repairing it's our responsibility to repair them. It's expensive already, and it's a long stretch. So if the repair would need to go through the pavement, that would add to the cost. So that's a concern for us.
I want to add some information. The city requires that those utilities are protected in place. If there is a conflict, the applicant needs to relocate those utilities at his expense. If the meter is getting paved over, they have to extend your existing service line and relocate the meter to a safe location, and it needs to be in a landscaped area. So those are the requirements in our design standards. And the applicant will have to review our design standards and make sure everything is met. Again, if there's any relocation, it will be a required part of the approval of the whole project. Any other utility relocation plan needs to be included, as well as water and sewer.
And to build off what Min says, I know that your water line and areas, I believe, I don't have the exact location, but it may actually be outside the city limits. So that's something that planning will work with utilities internally to make sure that gets addressed of where the code is required and where we can apply that. So it's still under review at this time.
Yeah, correct. And I will pass this information to the official reviewer and make sure all the details are worked out.
So we have time for about 1 to 2 more questions before kind of wrapping up here and concluding. I just wanted to reach out to anybody else if they wanted to have last 2 questions.
I've got like a couple of rapid fire, if you don't mind. One is, are there any specifics around the type of evergreen trees that are being planned? Like, I know there's a lot of like pie in the sky, we don't know yet, but is there anything concrete that we know of? Like, how much these houses are going to sell for, ideally? What are they going to look like? What color are they? Right now, we're looking at a turquoise house. What colors are we going to be looking at for the foreseeable future? And then, what sort of fence? Like, are you leaning towards fence plus deciduous mix or evergreen? Are you going to, jump on the bamboo train like our neighbors to the north, which is gorgeous and very high? Anything like along those lines aesthetically that you can share with us that's concrete?
Well, cool. Can you kind of address kind of what?
Yeah, so from a fence, I think, again, the city regulations is, I believe, 6 feet or 8 feet is the maximum that you can go in terms of the height of the fence. The fences can be painted over any color depending on, I mean, we'll obviously stain our fences, but it boils down to individual preferences, especially on your side of the fence. That will be something which will be your prerogative. how you would have the fences look like. Evergreens, I think there's some, even for evergreens, there are some standards that the city has about the type of evergreen, the type of deciduous trees that we can plant. I don't recall which ones we would have. There is, if you look at it, so maybe if you go back up a couple of slides, Scott, to where we had shown the plants. So here, if you look at the bottom of that page, you see a complete plant schedule, which shows all the plants that are getting planted, all the shrubs that are getting planted, along with the exact location of where they're getting planted. So that is the kind of detail that has gone in terms of planning, and that's going to be the same for the peripheral land strip as peripheral strip of planting as well, which will have that much level of detail going in. I don't have the answer. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't have all the answers right now, but that's the kind of work that has gone in. So here, for instance, you can see, go ahead, somebody's saying something.
Go ahead, McCool.
So, I mean, you're talking about a Doug firs, Western red cedars, Oregon ash, you're talking about big leaf maple, you're talking about wine maple. So it's a combination of, you know, maples and firs and cedars and ash trees going in there, if that kind of helps answer your question of specifics.
And then McCool, can you answer about the aesthetics of the houses? What the proposal is?
Sure. So they'll be all single family homes. They will have 2 or 3 car garages, depending on how much space we can get there. They will very likely be craftsman style houses because that's what we see in the community. That's what we see along 93rd Street. So we want to keep sure that the aesthetics of the community are kept intact. They would have a good side yard, and we will make sure that landscaping is done to make them look more have more aesthetic pleasing view. From a color standpoint, we do mix of grays. We do use a lot of whites as well, but usually that's more of a natural tone. We try to keep it with that rather than some of the brighter, sharper colors. So I would say that's kind of the goal here as well, is to, again, blend with the Northwest style. If you want to look at the style of the houses, we've done transitional modern style houses, we've done modern style houses, and also traditional houses. Here it'll be a mix of the traditional houses or a modern farmhouse, which is again kind of a traditional house, but with a more modern look if we end up doing that. So those are the options that we have on the table.
Thank you.
Does that answer all your questions? I'm not sure if I missed something.
No, that's helpful. And if there's an online portfolio of your previous properties, that'd be super helpful. You know, one thing I'll also add, coincidentally, we lived on the border of Medina in our rental home before we bought this house, and there was a lot of construction going on around us. One thing that was super helpful from the developers and also the city, because there's work done on 520, you know, they really did a good job keeping us abreast of noise. They even went so far as to, you know, drop off earbuds with a little apology and a note of like, here's a window, it's going to be a bit louder, bear with us, we appreciate your patience, so forth. That sort of modeling was, you know, that sort of behavior is really, really helpful. And just, I just wanted to mention that, you know, going forward as things progress.
Yep. And Juliana, I would really like to be more involved in terms of the overall process and make sure everybody is aware of what and is coming down the pipe and how things are happening. I will, next time I'm there, I'll drop by and so that ways, you know, we can have a more in-person relationship, and that way it's easier for you to get answers to all your questions that you have. I've met several of you at different times over the past months, and I would like to continue developing those relationships. So whatever it takes for us to make sure that this is going to be an easy process, because it is a quite long process, we understand. It is also a process that does, when it's going through the construction phase, very disturbing in terms of inconvenience that it causes to the neighbors. We will try to minimize everything.
And I think building off that, I'm gonna kind of wrap up the meeting here. I would also state from the city of Redmond standpoint, we're really looking at trying to make sure this project meets the code requirements and work with the community. So again, if there's questions as this progresses, feel free to reach out to us. We want to kind of help provide that clarity. I think I still owe a few people a few follow-ups. I'll make sure to kind of combine them together in the follow-up as part of this so that everybody has the same information as part of it. Like I said earlier, I just want to make sure to reiterate, this recording will be on the City of Redmond's website. The PowerPoint will also be on the City of Redmond's website, as well as general questions will also be added up there as some follow-up. So that would be a community resource. And then if there's any other questions, you can reach out to me. My email is actually as part of the PowerPoint, but it's also on the screen here. It's sreynolds@redmond.gov, and then my phone number is also listed. So with that, I want to thank everyone for your time tonight. I know it's kind of ran a little bit long, but I truly appreciate the comments and the questions, and look forward to working with the community here as we press forward with this review. At that note, thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, man.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Hiba.
Thanks.
Thank you.